Well, good afternoon. Nothing, I'm so glad that we're here, not just right after lunch, just good enough to get over any level of food hangover from lunch. Welcome to the annual legislative conference. My name's Kendrick Meek. I'm a Virgo. I just had a birthday, so I'm all excited. It was this past Friday, but everyone who knows me well, I love a good month-long celebration. So here we are. And we have such a great topic. And not only as a member of and former chairman of the CBCF Foundation, I want to thank all of you. And now on the board emeritus chairman, I want to thank all of you for participating. And really, we look forward to this legislative conference being something that's very educational and something that you can get information and take it back to your zip codes and deploy it. And a very exciting time in the country. We have a big election coming up, debates and things of that nature. And while we're in this moment of discourse and ideas and next steps, this particular topic today is something that, as a member of the advisory of the Leadership Council of Natural Allies, that we take very seriously. And I want to thank the leadership at Natural Allies, my good friend Susan Waller, and also our members of Senator Mary Landrieu, Mayor Nutter, Michael Nutter, and also Congressman Ryan for making the key decision to partner with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation on such a topic, because it's something that's very important to all Americans. Natural gas has been proven to help not only climate change but be a part of a clean energy future. And in many cases, it's important that we work together towards affordability also for communities of color. And we're going to be talking about some facts versus fiction, today as it relates to making sure that we all move forward as America and as communities. We can do several things in the natural gas area, and making sure that we build a strong economy, because we are the Saudi Arabia of natural gas, and B, that it's affordable to those very individuals that are facing forward throughout the country. And also protecting communities as we move forward in the expansion of our energy needs. So with that, I won't talk too much because we have such a great panel. And a part of this, a good part about it, is the fact that we will, with this panel, because we have true professionals here that are able to, this brain trust is outstanding that we've identified here, we'll be able to take your questions, okay? And so I would say, as moderator, we look forward to your questions and not your statement. It's good stuff. So I'm going to start here with Tara Murray, who is executive director. Let me put my glasses on. Let me stop, because I did just have a birthday. Executive Director of National Urban League Washington, D.C. Bureau, and Senior Vice President for Policy and Advocacy. She previously worked in the Biden-Harris administration. So, Tara, why don't you come up and join us? Okay, there she is. Give her a round of applause. Ralph Cleveland, who, he's a pillar in this space, especially in energy, and I was so excited when I heard he would join us. He's the CEO of the American Association of Blacks in Energy. He also serves as Senior Managing Director and CEO of the Cleveland and Associates, a consulting firm. Come on up, Mr. Cleveland. This man here is a trailblazer. And, my good friend and colleague, I think one of the greatest mayors that have served. We go back a long way. And he's a part of our Leadership Council and serving with the senator and the congressman and I, the former mayor and I still say undisputed, still mayor, Michael Nutter. Come on up. What else I have here? I have more. I think I have more. I would like to also ask, and then Senator, are you going to join us up here? I just want to make sure, because I didn't know you were mic'd up. I didn't know if you were going to do I know, but I didn't know if you were going to do the Oprah thing from there. Or, no. Let me just tell you.
I'll just go on
ladies
up,
and gentlemen,
all right?
ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to say that I was just trying to figure out, because, I am coachable. And I will tell you, the Senator Landrieu, I really see her as a professor. Because
he does not need much coaching.
It's not many times, ladies and gentlemen, when you're on a subject like this, that you have the former chairwoman of the Energy Committee in the U.S. Senate. And the fact that she is so well known in the industry, but also legislatively. And as you know, the Landrieux, they're all over this thing. I mean, her brother was mayor, and she has a very long history, so they have a very long track record of public service. And the fact that she is still serving in this capacity, believe me, our kids went to the same school. Our daughter and my son went to the same school, Georgetown Day, when we both served here in Congress. But it has been a real pleasure of getting an opportunity to work with her. And so Senator Mary Landrieu, former United States Senator, we're so happy to have you here. And she's going to be moderating today. And I think that
Thank you, Kendrick.
That's where we are.
Thank you.
So I'm
Round of
kick it over
applause
to
for
you.
the Congressman. Well, thank you, Congressman. And we hope this is going to be a very informal and open for your questions and your comments. We don't want anybody in this room to be shy, because we really don't get to gather this panel of experts very often. And if you want to join us, Congressman, here, Congressman Meeks and I are very honored to be two of the 4 leaders of the Natural Allies Coalition, which is a coalition that was recently formed by leaders in the natural gas industry to reach out to people not in the natural gas industry, like the labor unions that build the pipelines. They're in the industry, they're not in the exploration production, but the building. Natural Allies was created to tell a story about the great asset of natural gas in the United States of America, and how it is a solution to our climate challenges, not a problem, but a solution. It helps us to green our grid, to clean up our air. It helps us to keep emissions lower. It helps us to be more affordable in our electric grid, and it helps our economies to grow. It is not a perfect fuel, but it is a pretty good fuel depending on the choices that we have today. We may have more choices in the future. We have nuclear emerging. We have battery technology emerging. We have some new fusion technologies for those of you that are keeping up, and I know everyone in the room showed up because they're interested in this. But Natural Allies is here to say to all of us in every community in this country, natural gas is an amazing asset, and that's what we're going to talk about today, and how it specifically affects all of our communities, from the East Coast to the West Coast to the Canadian border to the Mexican border. So Congressman Meeks and I, Congressman Ryan, and Mayor Nutter are the 4 co-chairs. We're all Democrats, specifically, not because we don't want to speak to Republicans or to more conservatives, but we think that this message really needs to be brought to a more Democratic audience, which this is. There might be Republicans and independents, you're welcome. But the Congressional Black Caucus is primarily reaches to a Democratic audience, and you are who we want to talk to about these issues. So before we start the panel that Kendrick has introduced, I want to just pull up 2 slides. And the one that's behind me, I want to level set for all of us. But I think you all know this. But if you don't, it's really important to grasp what the energy transition in this country looks like today. This is not the world. This is just the U.S. And you know that in the last 100 years or more, the United States led an industrial revolution. We all studied that in school. We know what it is. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail. You know what it is. But what you might not realize 100% of is that that industrial revolution was fueled by coal. Okay? I'm not from a coal state. I'm from a gas state. Some of you may be from coal states. If you're from Wyoming, or you're from Kentucky, or if you're from Tennessee, or you're from Pennsylvania, you know about this. I didn't know a lot about coal because we don't have a lot of it. I knew about gas. But the country was run on coal, and you can see this map, what this looks like. It says 2001, but you could go back to the 1950s, okay? So all of the states that are in the dark gray are states whose electricity was produced mostly by coal. Now look interesting in the Northwest. They've always had most of their electricity by hydro, that's dams and water power. And then you look at the purple, and it's nuclear, which is kind of interesting. People don't think we used a lot of nuclear in the United States, but we do. All right, so this is just a big picture. Now, Ralph knows this because he runs the largest, great organization, but a lot of people don't know it. Ralph does, but this is not for Ralph. This is for all the rest of us. And what the energy transition looks like to me, and I chaired the energy committee. I served on it for 18 years. I chaired it the last 2 years I was in the Senate. I represented an energy powerful state, Louisiana, which has 30% of its population is African American. As you know, Mississippi and Louisiana have the highest percentage of African Americans in the nation. We're proud of our diversity in our state. But when we started talking about the energy transition, what that means is we have literally transitioned from a coal country to a gas country. Okay, look at all the states that moved from coal to gas. All of the yellow. We still have some nuclear. That Northwest, honey, they are holding on to their water power and their dams. That's where they get their electricity. They like it that way. They have a lot of it. They have mountains. We have no mountains in Louisiana. We couldn't do this if our life depended on it. But they have mountains. That's what they use. They have nuclear. So the question, so I just want to leave that map with you. I'm going to do one more slide, and then we're going to take questions about what we want to talk to you all about. Susan, if you will do the next slide. All right, this next slide is a very upsetting slide to me, and it should be to you, but it's something that not many people in the country know about. When I chaired the Energy Committee, I also chaired the Small Business Committee in the Senate. And I had one of the only African-American chiefs of staff in the country at the time. And he and I started to think about there's such a disparity between the assets of white community and black. What is it? Because income can be the same. Then we figured it was net worth. This is shocking. Some of you know this. All of you should know it. All right, the net worth this is today from the census. The net worth in America today of white families, that's all in, equity in your house, everything you own minus what you owe, is $285,000. For black families, the median, not the average, the median is $43,000 for black families. That is a huge difference. 285 to 43. Neil, did I do those numbers correctly? All right, so 2 slides. I need you to get this in your head really quickly, and then we're gonna go to questions. The transition the last 100 years went from coal, that was cheap, 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 but it was dirty, dirty, dirty. And now we're moving to gas and to other things, wind and solar. We have to move because the climate is demanding we move. We have to get it cleaner. So this is the journey we're on. But we're on a journey with communities that have completely different asset bases. The white community has $285,000 of net worth. The black community has $43,000. So the question we're going to discuss today from the Urban League, which is an expert on this, to Mayor Nutter, who spent his whole life representing us all, and Ralph Cleveland, who helped build one of the largest, most powerful, and respected organizations in energy, are going to talk truth to people about what the cost of this energy transition is, so that we're clear about what it is. We can make choices together, respecting it, but not have our heads down in the sand that this is not going to cost and who's going to pay, and who is most able to pay and who is most unable to bear that burden of this energy transition, because it's going to cost trillions of dollars. This is not free, and it's not easy. And the whole world is in this big challenge, and we in America need to get it right. Why? Because we usually get things right. Like Michelle Obama says, not all the time. We've made some really bad mistakes, but mostly America can get this right. And then we can have to help lead the world on one of the greatest challenges before the world has ever had. This is a big deal, okay? That's what we want to talk about. We only have 40 minutes left. I want to say one more thing before I get to their questions or ask them questions. I want to recognize PPI. I want you guys to stand up if you don't mind. PPI is a Progressive Policy Institute. Let's give them a round of applause. They've been around a pretty long time. These guys don't look that old. Y'all can sit down. But PPI is a Progressive Policy Institute that kind of came out of the Clinton era, if you will. The Democratic Leadership Council, PPI, it was sort of a centrist, left of center organization that was progressive, inclusive, left of center, but really sort of trying to bring labor and business together in kind of a broad coalition that at least I'm comfortable with as a centrist Democrat and a proud centrist. And they've come up with some great data that we're going to share. So I'm going to start, Mayor Nutter, with you.
Before you get started,
I'm sorry.
Folks, we have some seats open here. It's like 10 seats that are open. Please feel free to come down and have a seat. We want you to be comfortable. And if you see your friends coming, you know, it's almost like when you're on the cellar of the train, please make room for them.
Don't take up two seats and put your purse on one.
Let these folks sit down, please. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
You're welcome. Yeah, we're so happy to have a crowded room. We're so thrilled y'all came. We weren't sure anyone would show up. We're like, thank you for coming, to listen to us, So Mayor Nutter, you as mayor of Philadelphia, people I know don't realize this, but you ran as mayor the largest gas system, public gas system in the nation. So will you give us a perspective? How are you thinking about this? What are you thinking for not only your city, but for the nation? And what would you advise us how to address this, transition and keeping our poorest communities in mind?
Sure. Senator, thank you. And thank you all. I echo the Senator's comments. It's always a fear that you're going to have a panel and like nobody shows up. You're like, damn, who are we talking to? I thought this was important. So just for background, Michael Nutter, former mayor of Philadelphia. Philadelphia is the largest city in the United States of America that actually owns a gas company. We've owned it for over 170 years, 500,000 plus customers, many low income. Unfortunately, Philadelphia is also of the top 10 cities, is also the poorest city of the top 10 cities in the United States of America. Poverty rate a little bit over 20%. And so people rely on the Philadelphia Gas Works, name of the company, PGW. And the issue about natural gas is that it is affordable, it's reliable, it's available. There's a TV show, It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia. Maybe some of you have seen it. Great show. It's not always sunny in Philadelphia, right? And so obviously there are other sources of energy and renewables. We've got solar, we've got wind. Most people cannot afford to put solar panels on their house, and depending on where your house is, it may not be sunny or it may not hit it right. I'm not putting a windmill in my backyard. It's just not big enough. And no disrespect, right? Those are all, great sources of energy as we move toward a cleaner energy solution for all of us. But what I would say to you is that natural gas is a part of, probably the two most important words I can share with you, a part of clean energy solution as we transition from coal, dirty, bad air, et cetera, you know this. But what people want, whether it's in Philly or Chicago or New York, big city, small city, whatever, you wake up in the morning, first you'd actually like your alarm clock to go off. Electricity. You'd like everything to be powered. You want to come down and have your breakfast, whatever the case may be. People need reliable, affordable, and available energy source. And so as we see the cost of electricity in many instances, or power in general, energy in general, going up in various parts of the country, we know that this source is always available to us. People rely on it, they need it, and the cost issues for many folks. Now, in the housing environment, of course, people talk a great deal about the cost of housing and how much of your income is going to cost of housing. Right behind that is actually the cost of energy. And many Philadelphians and Americans are facing a challenge on the energy cost component of their pocketbook. It's not often talked about, but it is generally the second right after housing costs. And so those are the issues that I stay focused on. That's why I'm a part of this great leadership council focused on natural gas. It is here. It's a part of the clean energy solution for the future.
Thank you, Mayor. Ralph, if you would speak from your long years of experience in the industry and now representing the largest group of industry leaders, from engineers to CEOs to financial experts to chemists to public relations officials that are in the African American and Black organization that you operate. Tell us about natural gas, the importance of pipelines, the expansion of pipelines, and how you think some people who are being frightened by it we need to think a little differently about the advantages that natural gas and natural gas pipelines are important to move this relatively cheap and cleaner than coal fuel. It's not perfect. It's not as clean as nuclear. It is not as clean as solar. It is not as clean as wind. But it is available, it's cheap, and it keeps people's electric prices down. How would you explain this, Ralph?
I think it's a great start to this by going back to your map. So if you put that map back up, that would be terrific. I'll start you with, where's the predominant, where are blacks? Where is our community in this map? Southeast, Northeast, right? So here's an interesting fact about the energy sector. And I would say to you that the energy sector is very diverse set of assets, very diverse set of technologies, very diverse even in the end uses and the technologies that are used in the end use. But when you look at natural gas, first thing to think about is 41% of all electricity generated is generated through natural gas. So even when we're delivering electrons, energy gets delivered through electrons and molecules. Electrons and molecules. When you look at how much energy is delivered to the end user with electrons, it's 17.7% last year. So molecules do the heavy lifting. Natural gas delivers 35% of all end user energy in our economy. So it's important for us to start there. And then when you look at the map, so what if you just think about how this diversity of energy mix and where our communities are, when you look at that energy mix and who has those jobs, the one sector in this industry that is on par in terms of equity standpoint, from a job standpoint, is natural gas. It has the highest percentage of black jobs. I'll use that term.
We're soon going to have another black job, the president. The Go ahead.
And listen, these jobs in this industry are really sort of an opportunity in terms of our community across the energy sector, no matter where you might be able to, what technology you might be able to get into in this industry. I would say this is a terrific time to think about a career in the energy sector because of this tremendous transition that we are going through. Globally, there's going to need to be spent some $232 trillion to get through this transition and impact climate in a positive way. So now's the time to get involved, but understand as sort of this broad context of how important natural gas is to this mix. Because here's the other thing, as already been shared, wind doesn't blow all the time, the sun doesn't shine all the time. So you've got to have something that's providing the backup for those technologies. So if you want to bring more solar, you want to bring more wind, it also means you have to have something in that mix that can make up for when those are intermittent sources of electricity. That's why natural gas, because it is a lower carbon solution, that's why it makes so much sense.
And Ralph, let me follow up real quick, and then Tara, I'm going to get to you. The other options that I know of, and I might have missed something, would be nuclear. It's been a steady 20% providing our electricity, except some regions have shut down their nuclear power plants because they thought they were unsafe. They decided they didn't like nuclear, but they don't want gas. So the question is, what are they going to do to keep lights on? It's a fair question. Nuclear or batteries? Can you talk just a minute about the benefits of nuclear, but nuclear doesn't work the same way as gas. Like you can't turn it on and turn it off, Ralph, right?
That's correct.
And then can you say something about batteries? Because everybody, even my children, tell me, Mother, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course, I was a United States Senator. They're in high school. But I don't know what I'm talking about, okay? Mama, we have things called batteries. I'm like, sweetheart, I know what batteries are, but they only last like a few hours. We need like power for days. So Ralph, will you explain to my kids about batteries, please?
Certainly. And I'll bring up a couple of other things about this, the technology and the rare earth metals that are required
please. Thank you.
to really, build out any battery energy storage system. So to the point, nuclear is for very steady load. It cannot ramp up and ramp down the way natural gas can. So from my standpoint, and representing the 720,000 blacks that are in the industry, we have, as Senator Landrieu described, we've got 1,500 members in every sector of this this energy economy. So when we look at what's really going to be needed, it really is an all of the above strategy in order for us to get to where we need to be. But we need to understand the role that each of these technologies and each of these fuels needs to play. So nuclear can't be the be all end all, simply because it can't be ramped up and ramped down. Battery energy storage, all for it. Again, we must address this climate change issue. How many of y'all know that our community is a community that's most adversely impacted by climate change? So I'm standing here today to say, we've got to get busy. We've got to make some changes. We've got to move this forward. But we also have to understand the pragmatic realities of what we're dealing with. Batteries require rare earth metals. And getting access to these rare earth metals is not an easy thing. Okay. So relative to how are we going to accomplish all of this, again, battery energy storage can only be a part of the solution because these metals are rare. And, guess what, by the way, I'm all for it. So the continent of Africa has tremendous amount of rare earth metals, right? But guess who's actually going after getting access to that now?
China.
China, exactly. So again, we've got to do more. And here's what I would tell you relative to that as well. And that is, we in the Black community, particularly those of us that are in this energy sector relative to this issue, I believe are a really strong and strategic asset for this country in terms of being able to share and open the doors for and provide technical assistance for those who want to get involved in this industry. And so again, it's got to be an all of the above strategy, but each technology has its limitations and has its place in this mix. And it's got to be a mix. Don't let anybody tell you any different. It has to be, because the end users have many and varied uses of the fuels and of the energy that's delivered to them. And so it's got to be a diverse mix.
Tara, will you jump in, and then I'm going to open it up to the other panels, and then we're going to actually open it up to questions, because this has been just actually excellent. Tara, the Urban League is an amazing organization with an amazing history and a very promising future, and please let Mark Morrell know how sad we are that he's not here, but we are thrilled to have you, and of course Don Cravens, who worked there for many years as well. Tell us from the Urban League's perspective, from an economic standpoint, why this energy transition is so important. How can the Urban League help lead in the Black and brown community, give people opportunity, and what should this group of leaders know about the work that the Urban League is doing on this?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I will extend those greetings to Mark, who, as you know, lost his mother recently.
Yes.
And just want to thank you for allowing us to be on this panel. It's so important that our conversation around energy and around energy policy really balance for three things: balance for environmental sustainability, balance for economic growth, which we're talking about, and also balance for social equity. The National Urban League partners with, a lot of various organizations. We are a nonpartisan organization, and so that means that we work across the aisle. We have to work with policymakers from both parties. We also work with business leaders and with grassroots community organizations and with the communities that we serve. We're in 36 states and the District of Columbia. We're in over 300 communities around this country. And so we understand firsthand the impact of the policies on the communities that we represent. And our focus in policy, including energy policy, is always on advancing equity, particularly for those most vulnerable, those marginalized, historically marginalized communities, which include low-income communities, and ensuring that the policies that we're creating are not creating undue burden on the communities that we represent. In the current conversation around energy, in the current energy debate, there are the rising costs of energy. There are also, conversations that are happening around affordability. And we are concerned that with the rising costs and with this extreme push to transition to different energy sources, that we are losing and not thinking about the conversation as it relates to affordability and the impact that has, particularly on our communities, particularly on communities of color. And so we have been advocating. I want to just echo something that was said. Obviously, we are in the fight for climate change, and we strongly support reducing our carbon footprint. But we understand that, that cannot be done at the expense of our community. It cannot be done at the expense of exacerbating an already existing economic disparity that exists within this country. And so we push for just transition and understand that the needs have to be balanced and have to center the voices of vulnerable communities, the communities that we represent. We have to be at the table. having the conversations, creating the policies, talking to policymakers so that the affordability conversation can be centered in the conversation about where we go in this country as it relates to our energy policy. Thank you.
That leads me to another slide I want to pull up, and then I'm going to ask Mayor Nutter to jump in here. But I mean, this is really telling, and this is the work from PPI. And Susan, I don't know if we can identify this slide, but it's the one that shows, the guys in the back have it and you have it. It's the one that shows the spike in Boston, Los Angeles, New York, compared to Chicago and Dallas. Do we have that? Can you pull that up? Okay. This is a very important slide. When you talk about the cost of electricity per kilowatt hour, that's the way you get your bill. If you're in a state like Louisiana, your average is about 13 to 15 cents a kilowatt hour. Look at that red line. That is Boston. If you live in Boston, you are paying for almost 40 cents a kilowatt hour for your electricity. And the reason is, and I know this is going to be harsh, but people need, the political leaders there need to hear it, it's because they are stopping gas pipelines from going into the Northeast, and they're pushing wind and solar, offshore wind, which is great. I'm all for it. It's extremely expensive. It's wonderful, but it's expensive. And we have to balance what we kind of need for our climate with what we can afford, you know, as a community and as households. And this isn't to slow it down, it's just to know it better so we can make the smartest choices. So look at Boston, look at Los Angeles, where a lot of people live. A lot of Black and brown people live in Los Angeles. They spiked up to $27. New York Metro spiked up to $27 a kilowatt hour. Meanwhile, Chicago, which uses a lot of gas, is down here in the 15, you know, I wish it was lower, but you know, the average is 12 to 15. That's sort of the lowest in the country. And coal could even be lower. Coal is cheap, really cheap. If we ran the whole country on coal, we'd all get a break in our electricity bill, trust me. But the policy, we can't do that because of climate. So we have to think, okay, what's the next cheapest group, you know, of fuels to do that are cleaner? They may not be perfect, but something we can afford. Mayor, am I saying this?
No, you're on it. And I guess if we all went back to coal, we'd just all die. So,
We would.
I mean,
We would be happy, we'd have money, but we'd be dead.
Yeah. My father used to say I was going to be the richest man in the graveyard. Like, thanks, Dad. I just wanted, even though I'm the former mayor, and this is generally kind of not my lane, but through the work that we've been doing, you also have to focus on the fact that the United States of America, being a leader in natural gas, is also a national security policy issue as well. Not only do we have a lot of it for ourselves, we export natural gas around the world, helping to shut down coal plants across the world, and providing for national security from an energy standpoint for our allies. You will recall a couple of years ago when Russia invaded Ukraine, gas prices spiked because the market was scared and people didn't know what was going to go on. Russia then also threatened the rest of Europe that they supply energy to with regard to their positions on the war. The more we can export natural gas, one, that's jobs here in the United States of America. Again, not in a debate with wind and solar. This is a readily available energy source that can be exported to other countries, shutting down coal plants, cleaning up the air, providing jobs here in the United States of America, and actually contributing to the national security, not only of the United States, but also our allies around the world, not dependent on actors like Russia, who, you know, whatever our relationship is with them, on a day-to-day basis, generally not good. And so we want to make sure that we have a prominent place around the world from an energy standpoint. Countries will fight and compete on energy for the rest of our lifetimes.
All right, I'm going to ask Ralph to do one more little clarification. I loved your prompt about the potential partnership with the African nation, which is really African continent, which is really interesting with the United States. I'd like you to elaborate a minute about that, your thinking on that. Because if we are going to have the best batteries in the world, you're going to need to get these minerals from somewhere. We shut our mines down in the United States of America. They're mostly in Arizona, mostly in Wyoming, help me here, some in Idaho maybe, but there's only one or two operating mines in the US because the environmental community and others shut the mines down. So when we go to look for these minerals, you could go to Mexico, we could go to Canada, we can go to places in Africa, and if we don't hurry up and make these partnerships, China's going to own all the mines. They already sort of collapsed the nickel market. I know just enough to be dangerous about this. They shut down a lot of the private sector operations going on in Australia because they flooded the market with cheap nickel, and the Australian mines collapsed, which are our allies, Australia. So, Ralph, would you elaborate a little bit on this? And then we're going to take questions from the audience because this is really a very rich subject. And you're not used to, we don't always have these kind of experts here, so they can answer a lot of the questions or comments you might have. But Ralph, what are you thinking about that? And have you met with some of the African leaders on this, and how are they feeling about this?
I have. I spent some time in Africa, and I've spent some time even in the Caribbean, relative to the African diaspora and how we should think about how we partner and move forward. And so much of it is, at least for these developing countries. I mean, y'all know the developing countries don't have readily available the technical expertise to understand all the various ins and outs of this energy sector. And so, in so many instances, they've been exploited from a standpoint, whether it's Russia and China and others, or even those that are sort of using the technology to export the raw materials back to other developed countries rather than developing a full value chain on the continent. And so they are in very much need of the technical expertise to actually build out the entire value chain, so that they have an economy that's worthy of their growth and development as well. And so when we think about what our contribution to that might be, again, we have the talent here in the U.S. to be able to support that. We have the talent within our community to support that. And so we ought to be thinking about how we do that. I just want to go back to one more thing about this affordability issue, because it's a big deal. Please understand this. It's a vicious cycle. Because a lot of times in our community, about 34% of our community is challenged from an energy burden standpoint. And literally what that means is, let's just think this through. It's a vicious cycle because the biggest barrier to academic performance for our community is not based on race. It's based on financial wherewithal. If I'm sitting and having to make a decision as to whether or not I leave my utility on, or I buy groceries, or I buy medicine, and my utility, this month I have to make the decision to let that utility bill not get paid. The next issue you're going to run into is, and my wife's a teacher, she works in a school that has a 42% chronically absent, severely chronically absent student base. And sometimes when you ask the students why were they absent, because that's what they're asked to do, it's because, oh, I didn't have any clean clothes because our electricity's out. Well, you can't learn if you can't get to school. And so all these things have a compounding effect. So this affordability issue for our community is a big issue. And if we are going to allow our kids to live in a more stable environment in which they can get to school, that they can learn, guess what? Energy, the cost of energy has a play in that. We all need to understand that. So this issue It's a particularly acute in our community. And understand this, it's an issue across every community. It's just more acute in our community. So I at least wanted to bring
Because
that
the
out as well.
assets are less. Neil, would you come to the mic and just make, since you did PPI, the study, would you just say a minute or two about sort of the nugget of this study on the issue of reliability, affordability, and how the Black and brown community might be affected? And then we're going to open up for questions. Oh, the chairman's here. Oh, the chairman. I'm sorry, Neil, you can't speak. The chairman's in the room. Mr. Chairman, Stephen, come on up, please.
Chairman's in the
And
house.
Thank you for stopping by.
Just,
And we told him we'd probably put him on the spot when he came, but he's used to being on the spot, and he's been an amazing voice for a balanced energy policy in our country. That's what we're talking about here, the need to be clean but affordable and reliable. We were actually just talking about mining, which you actually know a lot about and are an expert from the state of Nevada. And we were explaining how we're all for a clean energy future, but we need to get a little bit more clear about the cost and the affordability to everyone, but particularly to the Black and brown families.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the privilege of just stopping in to Senator Landrieu for your friendship, your leadership. Mayor, it's great to see you as always. And my dear friend and colleague, he's like a mentor to me, Congressman Kendrick Meek. But look, energy drives our economy, and the Congressional Black Caucus, our members are focused on making sure that we have an economy that works for all of us. That means we have to have an energy policy that works for all of us. And that's why this session is so important, to make sure that we are open to an all-above approach to energy that really does focus on having the resources we need, having the jobs, having the procurement and business opportunities, and having the investment in the communities where those energy production is occurring. I'm from Nevada's 4th District. I cover 50,000 square miles. I have lithium mining. I have gold mining. I have renewable energies. I have actually more than $100 billion of renewable energy development happening in my congressional district right now. But we have to be at the center of those opportunities as Black America. And that is why this conference and this session is so timely and so important. And I just want to thank your organization and the coalition of partners that you've brought together, because it's about making sure that we are at the table, we're having these conversations, and we're leading in this space. We just completed our corporate accountability report on diversity, equity, and inclusion. It was released on Monday. It talks about what good looks like. And I do have to say that while we had over 200 Fortune 500 companies respond, we broke it down by sector and industry. I want to commend the utilities and the energy sectors, because they are affirming their commitment, and I think it's largely because they're highly regulated entities. But I also need them to make sure they understand they have to include Black and brown communities as we continue to advance economic opportunity, because we want full economic participation, not to be left out, not to be given only minimal resources, but to be at the center of that opportunity. So thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Congressman. Thank you to our panel, as always, for your work.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you so much. I know you have to run, but you honor us by stopping by, and you've been wonderful. Thank you so much.
It's your conference. You're not interrupting.
Neil, we have 10 minutes left if you want to just say a word. Yeah, and then we'll open it up for the last 10 minutes of questions.
Great. Thank you very much. Progressive Policy Institute is thrilled to be working with this group and doing some research. If I can just quickly look at this chart, the Boston number that's been, and you see the cost there. If we can go to the next slide really quickly. This is the city of Boston. The slide's a little, you'll see on the left-hand side is the energy burden in Boston. This is where the people are most affected by that high number when you see that spike. On the right-hand side, you see the share of black population in Boston. They're the same map. So when cities are being asked to constrain their natural gas supply for a number of reasons, and you see those spikes in Boston as one of those places, this is where the cost is being laid. What we're doing at PPI, this is just a very brief look at this. We're going to have a full report out next year. We're going to go and look at every city. We're looking at every congressional black congressional district, and we want to talk with members, staff. We want to find out what's going on in every district. We're not coming in and telling people what they need to be doing. We're looking at what's happening on the ground, the effects that this is having in those communities, because this is who's paying the bill for this. So that's what we're doing at PPI, and hope to work with each of you.
Thank you, Neil. All right, comments or questions? Yes, sir. And please identify yourself, and you can just, ask. Yeah.
My name is Adam Ahmed. I'm a senior technology analyst at Accenture. Since I was 9 years old, I've always been really interested in energy and how we can move towards sustainability. And my question is, so I studied mechanical engineering and studied sustainability in college. And one of the things I learned about was Jevons paradox, where when we have technology that makes the efficient use of resources increase, it also can increase the demand for that resource.
Yes.
And the use of it.
Yes.
So we talked about lowering costs and helping black and brown communities, which I'm obviously all for, but I'm also thinking about how can we continue to grow without just outpacing the resources, make sure everyone has access, but we're not just exponentially growing in our consumption, because I see energy as a social policy and technology effort. So how do you guys
You want to
see
take
that
that, or you want me
kind of
to?
being at play rather than just delivering energy?
Ralph, you want?
I'll take this. Look, when you look at the issue of how do we handle climate change, so much of what needs to happen is around energy efficiency. About 1/3 of the reduction in carbon has to come from energy efficiency programs.
It's efficiency light bulbs, efficiency,
So many different technologies that need to be looked at in order to improve the in-use efficiency of the energy that's delivered. And so, again, we won't get there except for an all of the above strategy, including energy efficiency as being one of those things. But I also want to speak to this issue of growing demand as well, because there's a wild card at play here, and it's called artificial intelligence.
yes.
And the data centers associated with it. A lot of our electric utilities are starting to have to grapple with just the sheer demand of some of these data centers, and they can be quite substantial. One large data center can take as much energy as 52,000 homes.
Which is like a small city.
Absolutely.
Or a medium-sized city.
A large AI data center can use as much electricity as all of New York City. So there is a wild card from a demand standpoint that is coming. And again, to your point, we're going to have affordable sources of energy just to meet that demand alone, irrespective of what it looks like today.
Okay.
So we've got work to do.
We have 1 minute left. I'm sorry. This is so
Sure.
interesting. All right, you go ahead. We're going to take one more minute. Go ahead, real quick.
Tristan Thomas, I live in Roxbury, in Boston, representing the Black Economic Council of Massachusetts. Spent a lot of my time working on energy efficiency issues and getting black businesses and communities involved in a just transition. My question is about how publicly owned versus investor-owned utilities, how they compare in delivering an just transition, both from an affordability perspective, but as well as an environmental justice and environmental health perspective.
I wish I knew the answer to that. Do you know, Ralph?
Well,
Because I can tell you it's about the same.
Yes.
Investor and public utilities, the costs are about the same. All utilities are struggling with trying to provide cleaner. I'm on a utility board from the Midwest, so I don't know exactly Boston, but they're trying to have a new mix. Instead of coal, which we showed you, they're struggling with moving to cleaner, which is natural gas, and also putting more wind and solar. But like Ralph said, we need all of it. You can't just do it with wind. You can't just do it with solar. You have to have a combination. And nuclear. Southern Georgia just built this new nuclear plant. Really clean, really expensive.
Senator, can I add
go
something
ahead.
to that point around public-private and the transition to cleaner energy? I think the other thing, I want to just frame this around policy since we are at the annual legislative conference. I think it's so important that as you're here in these spaces and as you have the opportunity to engage with policymakers, that we are advocating for, these companies are getting a tremendous amount of money from the federal government to ensure this transition. And we need to ensure that there are built-in opportunities for our community so that we can benefit from these advances and that we are not bearing the burden. And I think oftentimes the challenge is that, money is going out, it's going out quickly, but we are not reaping the benefits of the money that is flowing to communities to address this clean energy and the energy crisis that we're in. And so we have to be advocates as money is going to public and private, right, sources. We have to ensure that the policies are in place that ensure that we have access, that our communities have access, and that we are not bearing the burden. So just want to put that out there.
My last
word,
comment
Mayor
is
Nutter.
on the
Sorry,
same
we're out
on
of
the same
time.
issue.
Go ahead.
Public or private, they're all regulated. This is what I share with my students. You are not alive until some elected or appointed official signs your birth certificate. You are not dead until some elected or appointed official signs your death certificate. And everything that happens in our lives between those 2 points, some elected or appointed person makes a decision. Public or private, they are regulated. And these are the issues that we should be talking about with our elected and appointed officials who make those decisions about where a data center gets situated. Does the grid have capacity to even handle that? The jobs that go with that, the economic opportunity that flows from that. People make decisions every day that affect our lives. We need to pay attention.
Y'all,
Thank you.
it's been wonderful. Thank you so much. Let's give our panelists a round of applause.